Welcome everyone. It is time. It is finally the end of the NFL season. We're approaching the end. We're approaching the playoffs, and you know, with that being said, we thought it'd be really helpful for y'all, but also for ourselves to kind of rehash on the season and give y'all our NFL power rankings. So this could be, kind of debatable. Let us know what you think about it in the comments. Obviously, like and sub, share it to friends or whoever might be interested. But this is kind of how it's going to work. So, Vinay and I did our rankings a bit separately, like completely separately. So, and also extremely differently. So I'll kind of explain how I did mine first. Mine had no personal bias whatsoever involved. I spent like the last few hours honestly just like dealing with a bunch of like numbers and stuff. So like what I basically did was I ranked each team based on like offense and defense. So regarding offense first, like I took like their yards per game, pass yards per game, rush yards per game, and points per game. Took an average of that to get offensive rankings. Did something very similar for defensive rankings, except just points allowed for each of those. And then between those two ranking mechanisms, I took the average of those two averages and then ranked the teams like that. So mine is just strictly numbers based. There's no strength of schedule involved. There's no big wins, big losses, no like injuries or roster attrition involved. So Vinay's is a bit different. Vinay, you kind of care to explain how you chose yours?
Yeah. So while Michael's list is statistics based and more cumulative, based on the entire season, I did mine more on, recent trajectories of different teams. And the eyeball test definitely came into it. Head-to-head matchups recently, performances, how teams have won and lost, came into how they were ranked. So mine will definitely stack up a little bit differently to Michael's, and together we're going to try to narrow down the proper rankings of every team. And you guys let us know how well we did, or if you have any agreements or disagreements with our list.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of get it started. Kind of near the top of the list, a team that I think we both have near the top, the Buffalo Bills. Where are we ranking the Bills? I have them at number one. We can kind of go back and forth on whatever random teams. We don't even have to go in order, but I pretty much yeah, I have like a list of numbers like 1 to 32. Vinay and I are gonna like rank them, and as we go on, we can move teams around and do some direct comparisons and stuff. And then at the end, we'll kind of show you all the final rankings we come up with. But where do you have the Bills at in there?
Okay, so my list, I got the Bills at number three.
Okay.
Right now they're looking solid. They're looking solid. Offense is looking good. Defense is looking good. What really just separates them, I have the 49ers and the Eagles ahead of them. For me, what separates them is number one, the run game, the rushing attack. I think the 49ers and the Eagles just have such a dominant rushing attack, combined with their other offensive output. And the Bills, you know, Josh Allen really does shoulder a lot, and I think he is capable of making up for their lack of rushing ability. Recently, in the last few weeks, they've put up a lot of yards on the ground, but overall, I'd still rate the Niners and the Eagles above them slightly, but definitely have them up there, and the gap isn't too high. I think Josh Allen is the difference maker. He's what puts the Bills potentially over the Niners or the Eagles. He's that X factor. So yeah, sort of my idea is they're at three right now just because I think the Niners and the Eagles are more complete, well-rounded, but they don't have that boy Josh Allen. So definitely could be a little movement in my list for that.
Yeah, I know you said in recent weeks they ran the ball pretty well, but if we're looking at the numbers, I think Buffalo is eighth in rushing yards per game, whereas the Niners are ninth. So it really is super close. And recently, like you said, they've ran the ball pretty well. So I don't know, it is up in the air, but should we maybe throw the Bills at two for now and come back to it? Since I had one, you had three, we'll just put them
Yeah,
right in the
yeah, I'm
middle.
good with that.
Okay, cool. All right, you want to
Sure,
call out
sure.
you want to call out like a random team, and then we can just see what our rankings each were.
Yeah, sure. So one team that I found really intriguing was the Jacksonville Jaguars. I This was one of the hardest teams for me to rank personally because this team looks dangerous. They look like they can beat anyone. I mean, they beat the Cowboys. They handled the Jets pretty easily. I predicted that on the podcast to be a close game, fourth quarter battle, but no, they dominated that Jets team in MetLife. And right now, their record is 7-8. They've had some horrible performances earlier this year. Don't know what to think of them. As of late, they're looking like a top 10 team. They're looking at like a legit playoff threat, but they still haven't got that AFC South title. They still have some big games to be played. So I'm really curious where the numbers rank them, and I put them relatively high at 13, but I think there's room for them to climb up or down, based on what you have.
Yeah, that's actually crazy because I actually had them exactly at 13 as well. So that works out really well. I'm a big T-Law fan. In college, I always would tell myself, just think to myself, this is also is not like a LeBron meme. Like I actually did think about this. He just seemed like such an NFL style quarterback. I don't know, big body, just crazy pocket presence and a heck of an arm. I don't know. I think he can definitely lead them to some big wins throughout the rest of his career. So yeah, I also realized there also is a fatal flaw in our method of just choosing random teams because then once we get to the end, it's just going to be like scattered all around. We're going to have to move so many different pieces around. So I guess we can just start at the top. Um, so I know we did the Bills at 2. Um, so I guess we kind of have to settle this top 3, 4 teams. I think, you know, can we kind of agree that the top 4 or 5 teams are the Bills, Eagles, Niners, Chiefs, and Bengals? Is that like a fair grouping to make? I think that there's a
Yeah, yeah.
time.
I mean, yeah, those teams are definitely looking like the biggest threats right now for the Super Bowl and in the playoffs. For my list, a team that snuck in there, I got the Bengals at 6, and I actually put the Vikings at 5. Just based on from what I see, there are just teams that have that it factor. They have that special pixie dust going for them. Everything is sort of leaning their way. They're getting those favorable endings to games, those fairy tale comebacks. They just have that kind of pixie dust about them, the Vikings, and that's kind of what made me push them into the top 5. But we can debate. I'm curious to see where you have them.
Yeah, so the numbers have the Vikings at 23, which is crazy because I know that they've had some big wins, but honestly, I think the Vikings are one of the most like inconsistent and like hard to predict teams I've seen in a while. Like, how is it possible that you like beat the Bills in Buffalo and then the next week at home, you lose to the Cowboys by 37? Like, how does that even happen? That's crazy to me. And then not to mention like the biggest comeback in NFL history, like we already talked about on the pod last week. Like, I don't know. I think the Vikings are just such an unpredictable team. Like any given week, they could compete with the best team in the league, but at the same time, also like struggle against some of the worst teams. I don't know. They're definitely a team that we should maybe we should wait to place a bit later. Um, but yeah, let's kind of settle this like top 4-ish scenario. So Bills, Eagles, uh, Chiefs, and Niners. So what are we thinking? My rankings as it kind of stands right now, um, are just remember this is just based off the numbers is the Bills at 1, Eagles at 2, Niners at 3, and Chiefs at 4. Um, what do we think?
Okay, so we both got. I definitely agree with Chiefs at 4. I have them at 4 too. I think there's a little bit of a gap between the top 3 and the Chiefs. Um, yeah, I'm really high on the 49ers. I have them at 1, just based on their recent trajectory. I mean, the fact that they're blowing teams out with Brock Purdy under center, and the fact that they just they showed levels to the Commanders, which are like a legitimate wild card threat right now. Like they're not out of it. They just destroyed the Commanders, destroyed the Bucks. And I have the Eagles at 2. So right now, what I think is we both got the Bills and Niners kind of flip flops. So I guess we can discuss that between those two teams. Who do you think deserves to be 1, and who do you think deserves to be 3?
Between the Bills and the Niners. So I don't know. It really depends. Like I think the Niners are definitely a better team defensively, and honestly not by much. Like in my defensive ranking average or whatever, I have the Niners at 1 and the Bills at 3, and then for offense, I have the Bills at 2 and the Niners at 6. Like these teams are both really good at on both sides of the ball. So are the Eagles too, though. The Eagles are the number one offense in my rankings and the number four defense. So it really is kind of a toss up. I think if we're going based off of like the current rosters, are we going assuming that every roster is going to be full strength by the playoffs, or
Well, yeah, I sort of operated. I put the Niners at 1, even with the assumption that Purdy continues to play throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, I think it's fair to assume for the rest of the teams that keep their rosters in mind fully healthy.
do you think it's possible we could have like a 1A, 1B or a 2A, 2B type of scenario going on where we could like maybe rank it like that to where there's not much of a gap between two teams?
Yeah, I definitely think that the top four is so like closely knit. I mean, the Chiefs are in there just because they got that man Patrick Mahomes. Like they don't have the
Mm,
completeness. They don't really scare you defensively, Eagles, Bills, 49ers. But yeah, that's kind of like the way I'm thinking because I don't know that Niners team is so scary with that defense, but the Bills have what the Niners don't, which is just an elite top three quarterbacks. So
yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
I
it's
think the
it's
Bills
tough. Do you
belong.
want to do you want to just put the
I think we're both pretty high on the Bills. Should we put the
yeah, go
Bills
ahead.
at number one? Because I think that they're probably the only team. I mean, Jalen Hurts is that guy, but I don't know. I think uh I don't know. I think Josh Allen is like by far the most elite quarterback out of those three teams. I think Patrick Mahomes is obviously is well, not obviously, but I do think he has like the slight edge over Josh Allen. But we decided to put them at four, probably because of their defense. But I don't know. Would you be cool with putting the Bills at one? I mean, they're like a very very well-rounded team. Their defense has been playing super well recently, and I know their offense hasn't been tremendous as of late, but I don't know. I think they've also been in these big time scenarios. Big, I don't know. What do we think?
Yeah, no, that Bills team is so hard to beat in Buffalo, especially took some heroics from Justin Jefferson to do it this year. So yeah, I'm good with keeping them at 1 and putting the Niners at 3. I think, that's pretty accurate in terms of the entire season. And yeah, I think
All
we
right.
can should we move on to 5 through 10 perhaps?
Yeah. Let's go there now. So just to confirm, right now we got the Bills at one, Eagles at two, Niners at three, and Chiefs at four. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So this next range, we got teams like the Cowboys, Bengals. So yeah, I'll just read off my 5 through 6, honestly, or 5 through 10. So I got the Cowboys at five, Bengals at six, Ravens at seven, Jets at eight, Washington Commanders at nine, and then the Patriots at 10. So the numbers are probably not the most telling in this range. So what do you got, Vinay?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I got the Vikings at 5, the Bengals at 6, the Cowboys at 7, the Ravens at 8, the Giants at 9, and the Chargers at 10.
Okay.
So it looks
So
like we got the Cowboys, Bengals, Ravens, and did you say the oh wait, no, the
yeah,
Giants?
the Giants are a lot lower on my list, but I know that the numbers are really misleading there as well. So I think maybe we can agree on the Cowboys and the Bengals being uh probably towards the top of that range, right?
Hmm.
So what
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you think about these teams compared to? I know in the past you've kind of said the Cowboys are frauds, and I'm kind of on the same boat as you there. I think that like their win against the Eagles was like, they don't even have Jalen Hurts, and you're barely beating them. Like I don't know, like it's not something for Cowboys fans to like brag too much about. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that defense is concerning. You look at a team that's priding themselves on their pass rush with only one sack in the last 3 weeks. I mean, the Eagles shut them out. That O-line dominated the Cowboys, and they really gashed them offensively with Gardner Minshew. And I do not trust this Cowboys team going forward on to win a road playoff game. It's going to be tough for them. I definitely have a team like the Bengals above them. They destroyed the Vikings, so I do have a little bit more trouble putting the Vikings above them. So, yeah, what do you think about Bengals at 5 and Cowboys at 6?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It works perfectly
Okay.
for me. Uh, okay. So this is where things get interesting. So do you mind saying the teams that were in your 5 through 10 that were not the Bengals or the Cowboys?
Yeah, yeah. So I had the Ravens at Ravens, Giants, Chargers, and Vikings. Chargers towards the bottom, 10.
Okay, yeah. I have the Ravens at 7. Where do you have the Ravens at?
I have them at 8. I think the question is, do the Vikings first off belong in 5 through 10? And so
Yeah,
we can kind of answer.
I think that's an interesting question. What do you think? What's your case for putting the Vikings as high as you have them?
I mean, like you said earlier, this team is super kind of unpredictable in how they win or lose games. They can either get destroyed, dominated, or win when you think that everything is against them. Um, so they have that kind of pixie dust feeling about them going into these last few weeks of the season. So I think that's kind of my mentality when I'm putting them up high because I don't think that it's this. I find it very hard for teams to beat this Vikings team. Even though the Lions did it recently and the Cowboys destroyed them, I think right now this Vikings team is looking like one of the hardest to beat. The Giants got pretty close, but again, the Vikings just have things going their way right now. And I think that that kind of puts them at, I would say, at the 7 spot, maybe over the Ravens and the Giants and the Chargers in my rankings, and we can probably put them at 7
Yeah,
if you agree.
yeah. Here are just some interesting stats. This is not to change your mind or anything. This is just like things I found pretty fascinating. So the Vikings have the second worst yards allowed per game in the league, the worst pass yards allowed per game, fourth worst points allowed per game, and then that's on the defensive side of the ball. And then offensively, they've kind of struggled throughout the year to establish the run, despite having a Dalvin Cook. Might be his FSU genes. I don't really know, but they have the fourth worst rushing yards per game. Um, but I think you make a really fair point because even despite all those numbers that might be telling, that things aren't going so well, they're still finding ways to win big games. Um, so I don't know. I think that they could easily go into the top 10. Um, I'm just not sure about 7. I think we're both pretty high on the Ravens, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I like what they're doing right now.
yeah. Do we think the Ravens could maybe slot in at 7? I'm
Yeah,
not too
yeah,
sure.
I think we can justify the Ravens at 7 just based on the fact they have a pretty like their offense is nothing super exciting to watch right now. I mean, Tyler Huntley hasn't really been able to move the ball super consistently or efficiently, but the fact that they're still winning games and I like they're playing sort of that traditional Ravens smash mouth grinding out their wins on the ground and on defense. I think that that identity going into the playoffs, when you insert a super explosive guy like Lamar Jackson into that, I think that they're playing to their identity and they're winning football games despite being depleted. I think that says a lot about a team. It reminds me as a Saints fan when I used to see our team go 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater or compete and win games with Trevor Simeon, just grind out those ugly games. And for me, that's what really like made me super confident about that team going forward. The fact that we were resilient and we're able to win with that identity going forward, picking up more pieces. Yeah, Ravens at 7 sounds good to me. I'm high on them.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I do think that there is something to be said about the Vikings. I mean, they're still a 12-win team. There are not many teams in the league. How many teams in the league have 12 wins right now? I think it's what the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Bills, and that's about it, right? I don't think anyone else has 12 wins.
Mhm.
I think that alone is kind of a testament to, you know, how good this team has been this year when they need to be. Um, found ways to win, like we said. So I'm cool with plotting the Vikings in at 8. If you are.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Okay, so then who are the other teams you had in that range? I think you said the Chargers and who else?
Yeah, I had the Giants at 9 and the Chargers at 10.
Hmm.
Giants can possibly go down. I was looking back on this list, I was when I created it, I was just really high on the Giants because of the fact that they're, I don't know, that defense, I really like them. The way that they played the Vikings and they demolished the Commanders a few weeks ago, um, that's something that's really encouraged me to see because the fact that they're doing that with the personnel, you don't really look at that team and see a lot of, big name blockbuster superstars besides Saquon Barkley. And Daniel Jones going under the radar as one of the league's best dual threat quarterbacks, in my opinion, and what he's doing with sort of a receiving core that no one's really. I mean, Richie James had a breakout game last week. They honestly fumbled that game against the Vikings. To be fair, they had a good shot at winning it. That's sort of my reasoning behind having them in this top 10. But who do you think maybe contends with them to sneak in?
I think we gotta talk about maybe start talking about, I mean, I know we mentioned the Chargers, but maybe start talking about the Jaguars or even the Lions. I mean, the Lions have been a really, really hot team. Um, it's been fun seeing them come back from pretty slow start to the season. Um, I don't know, but what do you think about those teams possibly sneaking in? I personally am using this numbers game a lot less than previously. Like for instance, the numbers say the Jets are the number 8 team uh in the league. I don't think that that's the case. The Commanders are definitely not the number 9 team in the league. Uh, so maybe these numbers aren't like the most accurate all the time. I also think that because when I'm looking at it, like for instance the Jets, I'm looking into why they're at number 8, and it's because of their defense. Like they have, according to the stats, they have the second best defense in the league. It's just I don't think that they have their offense figured out at all right now to win like any competitive game. Um, and I think that that's something the numbers are not taking into account. This is like a culmination of the entire season. And I think that we should definitely focus more on like recent successes, kind of like what your rankings have been based off of. Um, so what are we saying about the Giants and the Chargers? I'm pretty high on the Chargers, to be honest. Just because of Justin Herbert, I have a lot of faith in him. I think he has probably like the third best arm. He's a top 3 arm talent in the league, right behind Josh Allen and Patty Mahomes. But what do you think about putting them maybe in at the 9 slot?
Yeah, I like what you said about the Jaguars compared to the Jets. That there is something to be said about that recent sort of slump and the recent meteoric rise of the Jaguars. The slump of the Jets and the rise of the Jaguars. I think putting the Chargers at 9 is a good idea just because that team making the playoffs, sort of not playing to the most impressive way. They're not blowing teams out. I mean, 20 points against the Colts, not super impressive. Herbert's numbers. I had Justin Herbert in fantasy this year, expecting him to have a meteoric season, winning MVP. By the numbers I've seen week to week, he's not putting up the craziest numbers, but he's making those throws to win games, and he's always going to do it. I have no doubt in the fourth quarter, Herbert's going to go ballistic, make some ridiculous throws, and keep the Chargers in it. Yeah, Chargers at 9 sounds good to me. And what you said about the Jaguars, you kind of talked me into maybe bumping them into that top 10 race over a team like the Giants, just because Trevor Lawrence is playing the kind of football that we thought he would play when the Jaguars drafted him at number 1. I really like what they're doing with that offense. Doug Peter looking like, he's got everybody in sync coming into the playoffs. I trust that coach. I trust the young guys to step up and really show what they're about. So, what do you think about Chargers 9, Jaguars 10?
Yeah, I'm good with that. And then I think right behind the Jaguars could go maybe the Detroit Lions. Uh, they've been pretty streaky, like I said before. Um, I think they might just lack the quarterback talent that the Chargers and Jaguars have right now. And that's probably if they had that similar talent, they might be ranked, you know, higher than them. But what do we think about, at 11 we throw in the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me this a week ago, I would have tried to make a compelling case for the Lions, a little higher in the top 10. I really liked what they were doing,
Mm.
but it really just kind of shocked me. One of the biggest shocks from this last week was, seeing the fact that the Panthers ran for 320 yards on them. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers here, and the fact that they absolutely manhandled the Lions at the line of scrimmage. I'm thinking that maybe considering a team like their division rival, the Packers, at 11, or your Miami Dolphins ahead of the Lions, just because, from my standpoint, I had them at number 15, only because that defense giving up 320 to the Panthers on the ground just really rubbed me the wrong way. I was really shocked and disappointed to see that. And so that's kind of why I hesitate to put them as high as 11 and maybe put teams like the Packers and the Dolphins who haven't really have been a little bit more consistent in their wins, both their wins and losses.
Yeah, and speaking of which, now that I'm looking at the defensive rankings, I guess it does come to be useful at some point. The Lions are dead last defensively in the league. I mean, they give up the most yards per game, the most points per game, um, the third most passing yards per game, and like the fifth most rushing yards per game in the entire league. It's pretty abysmal, and you know, I think the offense has been um, pretty solid, honestly. I have them at the fourth best offense in the entire league, actually. But when you can't even like get off the field ever, you can't. Your defense can't get any stops. It doesn't really matter. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm also probably now that I'm looking at it, probably too hesitant to put them at 11 as well. Um,
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about putting the Green Bay Packers at 11?
wait,
Just coming off a win against the Dolphins.
did we place the Giants yet?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I would put the Giants over the Packers.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we think the
yeah, what
Giants
do you think about the
maybe
Giants at
after?
11?
Yeah, maybe after the Jaguars. Yeah, and I'm not gonna hate on Daniel Jones or anything, but I do think that Justin Herbert and T. Law are a bit better. Uh, I don't know.
For sure.
All right. So we got the Giants at 11. So we're looking for that 12 slot. I don't know. I think I'm looking at the list of like elite offenses, and the Dolphins are at number 8. They're right in the mix with teams. Every single other team that's ranked right near where they are has already been placed. Uh, I don't know. It's just I don't know. Their defense has not been amazing. What do you think about the Finns? I mean, Tua's obviously out now. We're going to talk about that probably on the next pod. The concussion protocol came back positive. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, I don't know. That's like a whole separate discussion, but I just think they have so many weapons offensively. Like not even so many. Like Waddle and Tyreek are like enough for the Dolphins to, I think, be a threat, even with Teddy back there. Um, like I don't know if you saw that one play Waddle had last week, where he just like caught like a I don't know 15-yard like slant or like post, whatever you want to call it, and just took off. Like no one caught him. Like it's just crazy to me, like how fast. Like it's like the fastest duo in all of like NFL history. Maybe I can make that argument, right? Like they're nuts. Um, is it enough to put them at 12? I don't know. What do you think?
I think I think that for this next 12 slot, it's a two-team race. It's the Packers and the Dolphins. The Packers have been hot these last few weeks, winning games that they're supposed to win, and then coming last week and kind of stealing one from the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins had control over that. Um, so basically, what you said about Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, if you have those two guys on an offense, you just need someone under center to throw a check down, and who knows, they in any given game they can take that 80 yards to the house. So I just think that offense is the personnel is ridiculous. The run game is not something to bat your eyes at. I mean, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, they're cut from that Kyle Shanahan 49ers run scheme, Mike McDaniel run scheme. You're always going to count on them to break one loose once or twice a game. So, and I also think that the Dolphins O-line deserves a little bit of respect. They're not elite, but they're not horrible. They're right in the middle. And the Packers just don't have those same weapons. So what do you think about I know that the Packers just beat the Dolphins, but to me that wasn't a convincing win. It was they stole it from them in the second half. What do you think about Dolphins at 12, Packers at 13?
Yeah, I think I'd be good with that. Yeah, like you said, like we did just lose to the Packers, but I do think that like if we were to play the Packers 10 times, we probably win that 6 or 7 times. I probably still think we're the better team, and have played like that like for the majority of the season. I don't know though, like that second half was a pretty convincing like second half for the Packers. So yeah, no, I'm cool with putting the Finns at 12. I don't know if we're taking into account Tua being out or not. Um, but yeah, I'll put the Dolphins at 12 and the Packers at 13. Okay,
Okay.
who do we think is kind of in this next heap of teams to consider?
Okay, so from what I've seen in my rankings, this next group is gonna. I think the Lions have something to say, and the Steelers, the Jets, and the Commanders might sneak in there, but we can discuss. But I think it's the Lions, Jets, and the Steelers. Where do we keep? These are three 7 and 8 teams fighting for their playoff lives. Right in the thick of it. How do we rank those three right here in the middle of the pack?
So Lions, Commanders, Jets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh no,
my
Lions, Steelers.
wait, sorry, say that again.
The Lions, Steelers, and Jets.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So Lions, Steelers, and Jets. I don't know, like we said earlier, the Lions did give up like 320 yards on the ground last week. And I don't know. I don't know if you can win any football game doing that. Um it's just I don't even know what to say about that. But I don't know. Like I think that the Steelers have been very just average all year. Um I don't know. I think their defense has definitely played better than their offense has throughout the season. But I don't know. I think that they can definitely. I could definitely see the Steelers being put above the Jet. Did you say the Jets and the Lions?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think the Jets have it figured out right now at quarterback. Um, I don't know. I think that it was a. I was also saying this coming out of college, but I was not a believer in Zach Wilson. I think there was way too much hype around a guy who didn't face much competition at BYU. Um, I think I'd probably put the Steelers over the Jets, but I'm not so sure about the Lions. Um, they've outside of like last week, they're a pretty hot team. So what do you think? How do you kind of see it?
Yeah, I think last week, you got to put the Lions a little bit lower. Definitely don't deserve to be in that top 10. But then again, their coach, Motor City Dan Campbell, as he's called, that guy, that guy is quite the personality. And I don't think that this Lions team, even though the stats say they are a terrible defense, I don't think that this coach will let them get manhandled at the line of scrimmage the way that they were in Carolina. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that offense is high flying. It's going to put up, over 25 points a game. They're going to keep themselves in the game just based on deep threat. Jared Goff, you got to give him props for his ability to push the ball down the field. To Chark, to Jameson Williams, to Khalif Raymond, to Reynolds, to Amon Ra. I mean, the list of weapons goes on and on. And I think, the Jets, they sort of seem to be waning right now. They're really flailing after the whole Zach Wilson debacle. The season was productive in the sense that they learned a lot. I don't think there's much to be said about them moving forward right now. So I think, Steelers, Lions, Jets, potentially those three. I think we just gotta. I am personally high on the Steelers just because they're winning smash mouth football games, and Mike Tomlin has that defense playing at a pretty high level right now. Not sure if the numbers support that. That's just based on my eye test. Based on they destroyed Derek Carr, got this man benched, uh, pushed him out of Oakland. Pushed him out of Vegas once and for all. So yeah, I think the last thing to consider is that Steelers defense number.
Yeah, it's also interesting because the Lions did beat the Jets, you know, in New York, just 2 weeks ago. So I do think that we have it correct in saying the Lions are better than the Jets. Jets have not won a game the last 4 weeks. Um, so I think we should put the Jets last for sure. And then it's between the Lions and the Steelers. What do you kind of think? How would you kind of decide that?
What are the numbers on the Steelers defense?
So yeah, the Steelers have the uh 15th best defense in the league. They're giving up the 18th uh fewest total yards per game, 13th fewest total points per game. They have the sixth best run defense in the league, but their pass defense is a little bit suspect. They are the 23rd best pass defense in the league. And then if you kind of compare that to um, the Lions are, yeah, dead last. Remember, I said they were like just terrible on like at everything.
Okay. You know what? I'm gonna give the nod just because this is probably gonna change, as the year goes along, but just because of what we saw last week from the Lions, 320 yards, 240 yards at halftime given up on the ground. I mean, that's some like college football-esque numbers. That's some, what the
Yeah,
Gators do to teams that are like
yeah, that's not even
it's
college football
ridiculous that
esque.
that happened in that.
That's like Pee Wee esque, like me and you playing with like a bunch of 10-year-olds. But yeah, all right.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
we'll put the
So
Steelers
that's
at
Steelers over them,
14.
I guess.
Yeah, Steelers at 14, Lions at 15. And do we even want to put the Jets at 16? I don't know. They haven't won a game in 4 weeks. I'm not so sure.
I think we can make the case to put Commanders over the Jets because that team is 7-7-1. Jets are 7-8. Commanders have a much more difficult, division to play in. They've been battle tested. I mean, they just had to run through the 49ers, which is not an easy task. Benching Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz at the helm. A little bit of the same situation as the Jets in terms of the QB uncertainty, but I'm a big believer in the Commanders' defense. I'm a believer in Terry McLaurin and Chris Samuel. And, it sucks that we have to have this debate between Carson Wentz and Mike White, Carson Wentz and Chris Streveler. But, between the battle of the okay quarterbacks, I think Wentz, I might give him the nod. Jets haven't won in a while. Commanders, I don't know. They've been battle tested. They've had to run through some difficult teams as of late. But I definitely think that, based on record and maybe you can provide some numbers, how that stacks up.
Yeah, the Commanders are based on the numbers I have here, like the ninth best team in the league. They're not an amazing offense. What is it? They're the 18th best offense in the league according to my numbers, but defensively they're the seventh best team in the league. They allow the fourth fewest yards per game, 12th fewest points per game, seventh fewest yards per game through the air, and 13th fewest on the ground. It's a pretty stout defense. Um, they got going on. So I don't know. I'm cool with putting the Commanders at 16. Are you cool to
Okay,
send
yeah,
that?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's bump the Jets down. They haven't won in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of locked in the Commanders at number 16, we still have a few 7 and 8 teams left to discuss. So we got the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Jets, like we just said, and then the Titans. And did I already say the Bucks? I think I did. Yeah. So yeah, we got the Titans, we got the Patriots, the Seahawks, and the Jets, and the Bucks. So what do we think about those 5 teams, Vinay?
I'll say, okay, I'll say first off, stay tuned in the main podcast. I'll be breaking down the Jets Seahawks matchup. That's going to be a big one. But, those teams are close. I would put the Jets at the top just because they have a really, really stout defense. And, that's not something to shrug at. Obviously, offenses looked horrible, but Mike White's coming back gives a little bit of hope that, they'll get Garrett Wilson and they'll get some back in that offense. So I would think to say Seahawks, Patriots, and then Bucks and Titans at the bottom for sure. Those are the last two. And I would argue to insert the Carolina Panthers into the mix, even though they're not 7 and 8. So my thing is Jets, Seahawks, Patriots, Panthers, Bucks, Titans. What do you think of that? It might be a lot at once though.
The Jets, Seahawks, Patriots, uh, Panthers, Bucks, Titans.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I yeah, the Titans haven't won a game in 4 weeks. Mind you, they have played some pretty formidable opponents. Um, the Jags, they played the Jags who have been hot. They've played the Eagles, um, in Philly. They played the Chargers, in Los Angeles. Um, but I don't know. They just lost to the Texans at home. It's pretty inexcusable. So yeah, I do think that the Titans should be, um, at the bottom of that list. Um, I also like the Bucks being at the bottom. I think they've definitely struggled. Um, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they have things going, in Tampa at all. I mean, like who have they lost to recently? Um,
I mean,
let's see.
they lost to the who is it?
Yeah,
Shoot.
I got it here. Yeah, they lost to the. Well, they just beat the Cardinals in overtime. And we haven't even ranked the Cardinals yet, but they lost to the Bengals, the Niners. Um, barely squeaked one out against the Saints by one. Lost to the Browns the week before. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this team is necessarily terrible. And they do have the GOAT at the helm, which I know he's old, but you never know what to expect. Um, if they somehow make the playoffs, that's probably a team that I would not want to draw just because of his experience. But yeah, I'm okay with putting them, uh, right above the Titans. Um, let's see what the numbers say. Yeah, the numbers put the Bucks at number 11, on the season. So yeah, I'm okay with doing that. Let's see. I do think the Jets belong at the top. I think that defense is way too good to have them any lower. I think we pushed them down far enough. Um, the Seahawks, I'm fine with having right below the Jets and then the Patriots following. And then, do you want to kind of expand on why you wanted to put the Panthers in the mix as well?
Yeah, I just think that the Panthers are really dangerous. They're not a team that any contender wants to play right now. I think we saw that happen with the Lions. They were as hot as a team could be going into that game against Carolina. Absolutely stomped on them. Casey Horning out is really upsetting for Panthers fans. But other than that, I mean, that defense has been really, really stout. Brian Burns at the helm. Interim coach Steve Wilkes has done a great job. And I certainly think that going into the game against the Bucks next week, they should be the favorites. They're going to put up a huge fight against anyone they play, and I definitely think that looking at some of the teams of them that I put below them, the Bucks and the Titans, I think the Panthers definitely with their trajectory, with the fact they won big against the Lions last week. Again, I've been on the record in the past saying you can't trust the Panthers coming off a big win. They'll always disappoint. Based on the fact that they're being extremely dominant at both sides of the line of scrimmage right now. I think that yeah, there's something to be said about putting them ahead of some teams like the Titan Bucks. They're really tough to watch right now. I mean, nothing really small. Not gonna the Titans not really gonna dominate you on either side of the ball like we're accustomed to seeing, and the Buccaneers barely squeaking out wins and getting blown out against better opposition. I think that yeah, we got to give the Panthers credit for the way that they dominated the Lions last week.
Yeah. All right. I guess kind of moving on to the 6 and 9 teams. We got the Browns and the Saints, your Saints, mind you, as well as the Las Vegas Raiders. What are we thinking about those few teams? I'd probably personally put the Raiders at the bottom of the pack of those teams. Derek Carr has really struggled. I don't think he's necessarily the answer in Las Vegas. Josh Jacobs has kind of put that team on his back, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Raiders have to be at the bottom of that list of teams you just provided. It's really discouraging to see them bench Derek Carr going into next week, but they have just looked so awful. The way that they lost to the Steelers was just really tough to watch from a neutral perspective. Can't imagine what Raiders fans are going through based on the expectations at the beginning of the season. The Saints putting them at the top of this list, as a Saints fan, doesn't give me a lot of joy, but objectively, they just came off a win against the Browns in Cleveland. They went to the elements and beat them in their house. So sitting at 6 and 9, Saints definitely deserve to be at that mid to bottom tier. So I'm good putting Saints, Browns, Titans in that order. And yeah, Raiders definitely at the bottom for sure.
Do you think the Rams could squeeze in there anywhere or not?
Um, yeah, I think the Raiders are 6 and 9. I mean, they were on a bit of a win streak before the whole situation in Pittsburgh and previous losses that were pretty close. The loss against the Chargers for one, the loss against the Rams with Baker Mayfield was tough. Um, but yeah, I think the fact that the Rams just absolutely ran through the Denver Broncos last week, I honestly wouldn't mind putting them above the Raiders.
Yeah. Would you go as far as to put them above the Browns or nah?
I just think that the Browns just have that sort of they're not awful on either side of the ball per se. I mean, they're okay on either side of the ball. Their defensive line is stout. I think that the Rams win against the Broncos says just as much about the Broncos as it does about the Rams. At the end of the day, it is Baker Mayfield at the helm, and the Rams have just their record kind of shows how they fared throughout the season as a whole. Browns have sort of squeaked by some wins to be at 6 and 9, so I think crediting that record over the Rams, I'd say I'd put the Rams right below the Browns, above the Raiders, and then that kind of brings us into the bottom ladder of the rankings.
Yeah. No hate to any Texans fans watching this video. I'm not sure that there are any, but I don't know if there's a scenario in which they're not the worst team in the league. Do you agree with that? Or I mean, I know they just beat what's his name? The Titans, right? But I, I
Right,
still
right.
I still think they're probably the worst team in the league. What do you think?
I think that this is a little bit just based on the eyeball test, based on the culture test, the outside looking in. But I think there's a case to be made that the Broncos are the worst team in football right now. Even though you look at their roster, that's that's a top half of the list roster, both on the offense and defensive side. But I mean, getting dominated against the Rams, letting 50 plus points be put up on you by a reeling team with Baker Mayfield at the helm, when you got your guy that you've paid 200 million to, they do not look like they're capable of winning a single game. They don't look like they're in any game that they're playing. They look like they're barely hanging on when you watch the Broncos in every game that they're playing. They're barely hanging on, and then at the end, the inevitable happens. You don't really expect anything from this team. And I think we got to credit the Texans for competing and being, what they did with the Cowboys, pushing the Cowboys to the brink, pushing the Texans to overtime. I mean, pushing the Chiefs to overtime. I give that a lot more credit than what I've seen from the Broncos, which has just been absolutely pathetic. I mean, no shot at winning, no competitive fire, nothing encouraging from this team. And, this is just me being salty because I bet on the Broncos to be great this year. I drafted heavy Broncos with my fantasy team, and so disappointing.
Yeah, I don't know though. Like, if they were to face off head to head tomorrow, who are you favoring to win that game? Who are you taking to win that game? Do you really think that the Texans would be favored to beat the Broncos?
Bro, that would be such a snooze fest. I think that the Texans would definitely just because like they blew that game against the Cowboys and they had a shot against the Chiefs to beat them in overtime. And even though they lost both of those games, like I haven't seen a single loss from the Broncos where I'm like, damn, got to give them credit. Like that was kind of impressive. Like all their losses have just been, wow, that's really disappointing. What a snooze fest. Like what a terrible like couple hours of football that I just had to watch. So
Sure,
I don't know. That's kind of like the analytics might not support it, but that's definitely just me as an outside viewer.
yeah, I'm cool putting them there. I have no problem with that. Um, are we cool putting the Colts just barely better than the Texans? I think that Matt Ryan pulled a classic a couple weeks ago. What do we think? I mean, they I just don't think they have much going for them this season. Uh, I don't know.
Yeah, no, Colts. I think we should put like the Colts as the second worst team just because I mean they they just have nothing going for them. This looks like a team that's racing to the end of the season, and it couldn't come any sooner for them to rebuild. I mean, they benched Matt Ryan, they started and then benched Sam Ellinger. They put Nick Foles out on national TV Monday Night Football, scored a whopping 3 points. I think right now just the fact that they also have that effect where they've had some decent performances, some decent numbers this year, but that competitive nature of the team, they're just not competitive at all. And the Texans are certainly a lot more competitive as of late. So what do you think about just giving the Texans the edge again when you're looking at this bottom part of the list? It's not much that's going to separate these lackluster teams, other than things like, oh, what do you see from a competitive standpoint, encouragement on either side of the ball. So I think that might give a slight edge in my eyes to the Texans.
Yeah, I'm completely fine with that. And then I think the last three teams we have are the Falcons, the Cardinals, and the Bears. Uh, what do we think? I know Fields is finally back, I think, for the Bears. Uh, 3-13 is not super impressive. Um, one thing really interesting that I found out was that the Bears have, I think it's, let me see here. They have the worst passing offense in the league, but the number one run offense in the league. Um, I think that's just crazy that they're just so one-sided like that. But yeah, what do we think about those three teams? So the Bears, the Falcons, and the what other team did I say?
Cardinals.
The Cardinals. Yeah. What do we think?
Man, I have to put the Cardinals at the bottom just because you're looking at Trace McSorley at the helm. Defense put up a great fight against the Bucks for 3 quarters, but again, they folded at the end. With Watt retiring, there's just nothing, again, with the encouragement factor and the competitiveness factor. I like the Bears might be one of the best 3-win teams you'll ever see. But so coming back to the point of the Bears, I'd put them at the top of those three teams just because of Justin Fields, his ability to salvage a number one rushing attack from what is a terrible offensive personnel, in my opinion. That's not something to laugh at. And the fact that, they put up a great fight against the Bills. Scoreline might not say it, but, for a decent chunk of the game, it was kept close. They were turning over Josh Allen. So for those reasons, I'd say Bears, Falcons, Cardinals. Falcons, not much to say about them. They're just worse than the Bears and, of course, better than the Cardinals. So
Yeah, I think for the Cardinals, it's that throwing on a dime for like Trace McSorley. I don't know if you've heard of that song, but yeah,
yeah,
he's
I mean,
not been throwing it on a dime. That's all I'll say about that.
he makes a
But
better song than a quarterback for sure.
fact. So we do have our final rankings up. I'm gonna share my screen real quick so all the viewers can see what we got going on. Um, so we got the Bills at number one. I'm not going to read it off, but uh, yeah, here's what our final rankings are. Things was pretty successful. Um, but yeah, if you have any problems with this list, any major grievances, let us know in the comments. Let us hear it. Go in on us if you need to. I know we got some Bills fans and Eagles fans watching, uh, even some Dolphins fans. So let us know. Um, but yeah, I think any closing thoughts, Vinay?
Yeah, let us know how we did on our first NFL Power Rankings list, and let us know what you'd like to see from future lists. And again, don't hold back. If you have any problems, we want to hear them. We want to see. We want to have the arguments. Start the conversation. That's what it's all about. Thank
Exactly.
you guys for tuning in. Don't forget, like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you at the main pod.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think we might do some mock drafts in the future. I don't know if that might be safe. Like a first round mock or something would be crazy. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
look forward to that. We got a lot of time for that. It's not till April, but yeah. Happy New Year. Actually, well, I think we're gonna be recording before then, but yeah. Peace out, y'all.